The St. Louis Blues fell in overtime to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Hey, this is Brandon Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to talk about the Blues' OT loss to the Philadelphia Flyers, a 3-2 victory for Philadelphia, a point for the Blues, and 2 for the Orange and the Black. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, because this was kind of a relatively boring hockey game, if I do say so myself, but nonetheless, still entertaining. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. That way you stay up to date with everything. And if you're listening, hello to all my audio friends. Make sure to follow this podcast for all of your latest Blues news. I have the privilege of being in person to cover this contest as the Blues are in Philadelphia, which is where I live. And this morning, I was able to talk to Dylan Holloway. And Dylan Holloway is one of those players that we haven't really seen the best from him yet, right? Last season, I felt like Holloway put on a really good performance, but this season, for whatever reason, I just feel like maybe that's not there. Now, I'm not saying that Holloway is a bad player by any means, but we just haven't seen him play the way that he did last season when we called him Hollywood Holloway, because that's how he played. He played such fantastic hockey. Now, I want to remind you, my friends, that at the end of the day, this is a team sport. And I know that we judge players all the time individually, right? I know I do. But collectively as a team, this isn't a hockey team right now that is getting the job done. This is a hockey team that plays maybe most of the contest, right? And then they end up falling. So my question to you is, and my main point that I want to kind of talk about on this podcast today is, how can the Blues sustain a full hockey game and or extra minutes on ice? Because if you want me to be honest, I thought the first frame was great. I mean, we had 2 goals by Justin, right? But then nonetheless, we saw the guys crumble and fall as the contest went on. And I don't think that's something where I'm going to look at this team and I'm going to judge them too hard for not playing the same way they did in the first frame, because again, I think they executed in a really good manner in the first frame. But you cannot sustain that, right? And that's something that I feel like I have noticed, especially in Toronto when they went to OT, is that they put so much effort in to where it seems like they're out of gas as the contest just goes on. You know, it's funny. I was in the press box tonight, like I always am for Philadelphia, and I was saying to somebody, despite the fact that the Blues have a 2-goal lead because it was 2-0 at the end of the first frame, I said, it's interesting about this Blues team. They lost when they had a 4-goal lead over the Detroit Red Wings. And I feel like for the Blues, right, they're notorious for blowing leads. After the contest, Joel Hofer, he spoke about that, about how they need to do better, sustaining leads and holding on to when they have the lead, because that's a huge advantage, especially a 2-goal lead. I mean, Justin was on hat trick watch like halfway through the first frame. And again, I know that he's had a natural hat trick prior in his career, but that's a really, cool thing to see potentially. He just played his 1,000th hockey game in Toronto. And I have to tell you, like, I love seeing hat tricks. And even if it's an opposing team on ice, I still love the hat trick, right? So that was something that I was really hoping to see. But the Blues, I mean, this is a team where you have to question what is going on. When are they going to switch when is the switch going to flip, right? Because here's my whole spiel, and maybe again somebody commented on one of my videos and said, Haley, you're a little biased ever since you went into the locker room and you saw the guys, blah blah blah. Okay, well, to tell you the truth, I think that the Blues collectively as a hockey team are actually the most personable and nice players, okay? And that to me is a factual statement, right? I've been with the guys in the locker room. I've interacted with them for years now, some of the same guys. And I do think that they are very kind and personable. That is a fact. However, they all want to win. Not one player didn't mention the fact that they're frustrated over what's going on. And I didn't even bring it up. They brought it up to me. I think that they know that the fans right now are kind of checking out a little bit. While, and I always give credit because where credit is due, the season ticket holders, or for those that do go to game after game at Enterprise, or you watch on your TV, you listen, however you consume the St. Louis Blues, I brought it up to the players because I think it's really important for the guys to know that, they're playing for the Blue Note, they're playing for the fans. And it shows how loyal this fan base is, right? When you show up. Showing up matters. It matters so much. And tonight, I felt like the guys did show up, okay? Now, granted, there were some mistakes. And again, when you're a bottom team, you're going to see that. But I actually thought they played a much better hockey game than we're used to seeing out of them. One of the questions I asked Coach was about Jake Neighbors, right? He's been out for 4 weeks. He makes his return to the ice tonight. And Monty, he said that he was really impressed by Jake. And I think when you add, Neighbors back into the lineup again, you add speed, you add mobility. So again, at the end of the day, this team is in a position to tread upwards, but they got a point tonight, right? They got a point in Toronto. And that's, again, 2 games where you get points. Now, I'm no mathematician by any means. Obviously, you get half the points that you would have gotten, right? You get 2 out of 4. Not so great. However, at the end of the day, at least it is something. And I think for this team, they need some motivation. They need that oomph. Joel Hofer's mood after the contest, I mean, he looks so deflated. And you could tell that he was frustrated because he wants to win. He said he wants to win. I don't know how much, or I don't know what this team can take in terms of not winning. When you have your players frustrated and they know that they need to win, okay? People say all the time in my comment section, tell the guys to win, but they know. It's just the fact that they're 0-6 in OT this season, and that's combined with shootouts. Like, that's not acceptable at all. You are fighting for the 2 points, not the 1 point. But I knew when that breakaway happened tonight, I was like, yeah, there's no way that, Hof is saving that. And it's not disrespect to Joel Hofer by any means, but it was just such an odd man rush, and the Flyers had that momentum. And again, Travis Sanheim has a really nice shot. So I wasn't surprised necessarily that he scored. I mean, this is the 4th time that he has scored an OT winning goal. So it's not like he has a good track record of it. But again, the Blues just continuously struggle. And I like this comment a lot, actually. I am getting tired people thinking if we had a 3 or 4 goal lead, we would be doing better. Our problem is we just coast once we get a 2 goal lead. And that's what I am saying. And that's the issue with the Blues right now, is the fact that even if they do have a 3 or 4 goal lead, it's not going to matter, right? We saw what happened in Detroit. And I'm not trying to throw a pity party, feel bad for the Blues. I know they're frustrated, but the facts are, it doesn't matter how big the lead is, they still find a way to lose it. And that same energy, that same momentum that the Blues played in the first frame is how they had to continue on the rest of the contest, and they didn't. I don't know if it's like, hey, we have a couple goals, we're good. No, at the end of the day, you have to treat it like it's 0-0. That's how I approach things in hockey, especially where you always have to treat it like it's 0-0. And tonight, they didn't do that. And I am actually concerned. I'm going to continue to talk more about the contest tonight and how it's actually more low scoring than I thought it would be. But what I spoke with Dylan Holloway about today during the daytime kind of made sense as to why it was low scoring. Before I do that, and again, you can leave me your thoughts and comments in the comment section. I do want to talk to you about my friends over at Row Geet. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rogeet comes in. Rogeet.com offers fast acting, doctor prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rogi makes it so easy to get started. All you have to do is connect with a board certified doctor, and it's 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in person appointments. And the best part is, if it's prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door. So visit rugiet.com/lockedonnhl to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnhl. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONNHL so they know we sent you. Rogeet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Again, if you're just joining, the Philadelphia Flyers defeated the Blues 3-2 in overtime. The Blues leave Philadelphia with 1 point. Well, they're actually in Philly for practice tomorrow, but nonetheless, they do exit with a point. They got a point in Toronto. They get a point tonight. This time, OT went a little bit longer than it did in Toronto, but the Blues are still 0-6 in extra minutes. That is an issue. And my biggest concern, besides it being a low scoring contest, and I'm going to get into as to why I knew it was going to be that, it's the defense, it's the positioning. And there's a particular player that kind of comes to my mind, and I know what you're thinking. Here she goes again talking about her guy, Justin. No, I'm actually be calling out Philip Broberg. I think Broberg has been not what we expected him to be. I am disappointed a lot in his performance. Now, Broberg is supposed to be this offensive type of defenseman, right? And it would be great if he was scoring. It would be great if he was contributing offensively, but he's not. So, my question for you truly is this: what are we doing with Philip Broberg right now? You know, you have to also think too about the contract, right? Or you're going to extend him. What's going on? Because what I'm seeing this season has been very disappointing. It's so easy to point blame at, the defense as a whole. But in my opinion, I think Colton Parayko's been fine. Okay. I don't think he's been stellar, but he's been fine. Justin, he's been better, right? We know how I feel about him, but again, it's fine. Tucker, he works hard. So I'll give him that. Kessel again. You can't be like, oh, Matthew Kessel's the reason why the Blues are losing. You can't do that. Like that sounds, not good. But the problem is too, and I was watching Dvorsky tonight, and we all know I'm a big fan of Dvorsky. When the Flyers had puck possession, right, and he would have to draw back a little bit, he just was unable to get back in time. Or if he was back in time, he wasn't able to chip the puck away and force a turnover. And he's still so young, right? But I just didn't see an impact with him tonight. Usually in these type of games, you can kind of pinpoint different players that are doing the right things. I don't know if I saw that from the guys I was expecting to. Robert Thomas really blended in tonight. And again, a player that we know, like, there's his jersey. Well, it's a knockoff. It's a bad one. But we know I'm a big fan of Robert Thomas, right? He blended in tonight. I mean, Schenner had a nice stretch of a couple shots, right? But again, he's now on the third line. So I can't be like, oh, well, he doesn't deserve to be. He's in a fine position, right? You know, and I'm seeing comments right now about face-off percentages, and I'm not talking about that. I am talking about forcing turnovers, making plays offensively, right? I think that we need to throw away the statistics sometimes and just talk about what we're seeing on the ice. Because what I saw on the ice tonight wasn't exciting hockey from both teams. And that goes for Philadelphia too. That goes to not only, the Blues, but it goes to the fact that Philadelphia isn't really as good as they seem. I mean, they only have 4 regulation wins. They're getting their points in OT or the shootout. But I knew the moment that the Flyers were able to tie up the contest due to a Tyson Forster goal, I knew the Blues were losing. You want to know why I knew the Blues were losing? Because they're 0-6 in OT. And you know what that screams to me? A team that's out of juice. A team that maybe doesn't believe in themselves as a whole. I think individually, right, if you're in the NHL, like you have a sense of belief in yourself, you have confidence, you have swag. But if your club is continuously losing in the same type of manner, I get it if you don't believe in yourselves. Like, it's such a mind game sometimes. And that's why I'm hoping for the Blues. I hope that they're able to get out of that mindset, right? Once they snap it, right, and they get one of those OT victories, I am telling you, it's going to be a completely different ball game. But right now, it's probably just, a combination of every time we're in OT or a shootout, we lose. Like you saw the shootout again, their second shootout, right? And Holloway went like way to the right. Like it was bad. It was ugly, not good. The first shootout where Shen completely lost the puck. These are basics, right? And I don't know if any of you played hockey or you watch collegiate hockey or juniors, whatever it might be. Whenever there's a shootout, it is basic shootout practice to have control of the puck. And this team lacks it. Now, what I will say is when I was at Blues practice yesterday, they were working on a lot of 2-on-2 drills. But besides that, they were working on shooting drills. I think that Coach Montgomery is trying to reinstall the basics. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It was like an hour and 15-minute practice, by the way, which was a very long practice for any hockey team to have. But it was interesting, right? Because it's so easy to kind of like give up in a way, but these are still professional athletes, right? And my takeaway from the locker room, and I know I mentioned this on yesterday's podcast episode, was how positive this team is. It's a really positive atmosphere. I mean, even tonight when I was leaving the rink, Braden said goodbye and like was polite. Like there is this sense of positivity that you see from the Blues that might be a little bit confusing to others just because of the fact that they haven't been winning. But again, I want to talk to you coming up actually about something that Joel Hofer told me prior to the contest tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers. And it's very interesting to me. And I'm going to also give you the direct quote from my guy, Dylan Holloway. But before we do that, I'm going to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. And then I'm going to also mention some of your comments that you've been leaving. So keep on leaving those comments because, again, my friends, we have a lot to talk about. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score first to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play the game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I also think I'm gonna losing my voice a little bit, so that's kind of concerning. But anyways, I'm gonna read you what I asked Joel Hofer and his response. So I basically said to Joel, let's go see. Oh, that was tonight. Oh, we don't want tonight's recording. We want to get today's recording because I was like, I did not ask Joel that. Um, okay. What's the message in the locker room with how the season's begun? And even for you personally, what's the motivating factors? And he said, yeah, we just got to dig in a little bit more. Obviously, we're on the outside looking in, but, there's still lots of hockey. And I think we're still have a lot to, obviously improve on. Right. So, and then he said, and I think we're slowly and, getting better in a different aspect of our game. We keep trying to build, getting better every day in practice. And yeah, I think, it will come. I think our team kind of goes through these kind of spells during the year. So hopefully ours is done quick. Right. So that was today. I'm just kind of reading exactly what he said word for word. I know a lot of ums and things that I don't like either. However, I wanted him to get the full quote right with how it was. Um, so he said, work hard. We just can't seem to be, getting wins, but I think we're making strides in the right direction. The wins are gonna come. It's just a case to get one and go for it. So a lot of hockey players always say, like, or, they say these filler words that I'm not used to. I'm like, just, talk to me how it is. But obviously, you can get that sense of frustration, and that's totally normal, right? I mean, who wouldn't be frustrated after a situation like that? And I just also want to put this out here, too, that none of these players wake up and choose to go on the ice and choose to lose, right? They know that they need to win. But Hofer, I mean, and I'm not trying to come at him right now, but there were so many times where he was out of position in net, where he was behind the net, and Travis Konechny just completely missed the puck. Well, no, he hit the puck, but the puck was like spinning when it came at him, and he missed the net completely. That would have been an empty netter, and the Blues would have lost in regulation. However, the Flyers don't know how to win in regulation, so it kind of adds up. Either way, you have to just protect the net a little bit better and be more aware. I think that when it comes to goalies, right, it's so mental. And Hofer, you know, last year when I talked to him, he said that, he looks up to Binnington and, he's his mentor. And I think collectively, right, with how both of them have been this season, it's not good. So I'm sure, for both of them right now, there's a lot of frustration. No goalie wants to, live with the fact that all these pucks go behind them um, with the same manner of fashion, in a sense, right? Where you have a lead and then you don't have the lead and then you lose, and it's the same story over and over again. I think for this team, though, they have a coach within Jim Montgomery who is so positive and positive to a point where I hope that maybe some negativity towards how they have been wouldn't be a bad thing. Now, I'm not saying like to yell at the guys or ridicule them in any ways, but I, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. They practice hard, okay? There were a lot of turnovers at practice and things that were a little bit sloppy, but it's practice. I'm not going to, come at them too hard, but there was an optional morning skate today. And I'm going to read you the players that showed up to the optional. And I found it very interesting who showed up and who didn't show up, just for the pure fact of, well, your team isn't winning. Maybe getting some extra reps wouldn't be bad. So I saw Jake Neighbors, Jordan Kyrou, Tyler Tucker, Matthew Kessel, Dvorsky, Binnington, Joseph. I also saw Joel Hofer. And I didn't see like Robert Thomas. I didn't see Shenner. I didn't see, Bushi. I didn't see those guys. And I'm not saying, right, because it is an optional. They had a really hard practice yesterday on Wednesday. But at the same time, it does make me kind of question, well, what is the mindset with this team right now? I think it's important to have your leaders of the team go to the optionals. I actually think optionals are stupid. Um, I know they have practice tomorrow. I know it's a 10-game road trip, but your job is to play hockey. And the Flyers, their full team, they had an optional. Every single player went on the ice. I think that there should be no more optionals. Like, if you want my opinion. But I'm not going to be like mad at a guy for not going. I just personally think that optionals are stupid. I've never really agreed with them. Again, not trying to be that person. Oh, Holloway was on the ice. I don't know if I mentioned that, but and Matthew Joseph was on the ice. I don't know if I mentioned him, but all in all, you cannot lose games like this. You cannot. I'm frustrated for the fans. I'm frustrated for the team. I'm frustrated for myself even because I just want to be able to celebrate for once a Blues victory, okay? But I'll take the OT point, right? The loser point, which do you think they should get rid of that, by the way? I always said that I'm not too big of a fan of it because I just think that it kind of messes up, at least for me, the amount of points that a team needs to, advance, whatever. But I don't know. I'm really concerned, honestly, about this team and about what's going on. And they picked up a point. They have 18 points. They are still below Buffalo. So if you want to have things be put in perspective, that's how they're doing. I also have to say, though, they are 7th in the Central because the Predators are right behind them with 16 points. And then the Calgary Flames have 15 points. And the Flames, too, by the way, another team who is not doing so great, who has a positive locker room. Why is it the locker rooms of teams that are not doing well are so much more positive than the others? I mean, when I was in Calgary's locker room a couple weeks ago, they were laughing and joking. And for me, it's just so hard to have that mentality of not being just serious and down to business. Now, Hofer tonight was obviously upset, right? He was obviously ticked off. He was obviously a word I can't say on this podcast, but that's the type of mentality you need. You need to get angry, you need to get motivated, and you need to find ways to win. No more optionals, no more excuses. Play hard hockey for the full 60 minutes. And if it goes over, you know what? You play even harder. You need to find a way to win. And I am telling you this right now, they will do well once they snap out of it. I am telling you that. That is not, what's that thing that Paul Heyman says? This is not a prediction. This is like, wait, I had to Google what that means. Hold on. Because I am about to quote something and I was like, this is not a prediction. Oh, okay. Let me do this again. Okay, ready? Take one. Once the Blues snap out of this, I am telling you they're going to do well. This is not a prediction. It's a spoiler. Okay, I tried my best. Listen, I knew what the quote was, but I was like, let me go Google that one. Tomorrow's episode will be a fun one. Of course, whenever there's Blues content, we always have a good time. I also want to say my buddy Rob took a lot of great photos. He's a photographer for Flyers Nitty Gritty, and he will be, his photos will be featured for the thumbnail. So again, a big thank you to Rob because we talked about this for months now, and he's such a fantastic photographer. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to showcase his work because, again, if I have a friend that's a photographer, of course I'm going to utilize them. So make sure to check him out. I'll make sure it's linked down below in a couple minutes once everything is processed. The Blues, as I mentioned, they do a practice tomorrow here in Philadelphia. Well, it's technically New Jersey. Um, it's right over the bridge. I know. If you don't live here, it's probably very confusing. New Jersey is 6 minutes away from Philadelphia. Like, it's not far at all. It's kind of weird, honestly. But for the St. Louis Blues, though, they're not back in action until Saturday in Long Island to take on the Islanders, followed by taking on the Rangers Monday, and then the New Jersey Devils, who, by the way, are a really good team. So, like, I don't know if they're going to beat them on that one. That's going to be Wednesday. Luckily, after that contest, the Blues finally do head back home to where they will be hosting the Senators on Black Friday. And again, that'll be a 3 p.m. puck drop. So it's like the Battle of the Metropolitan. The Islanders, not so great of a team, but are still going to be a battle. And then, well, the Rangers are, in my opinion, unpredictable, and the Devils are really good. Nonetheless, it's going to be a battle. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow for an Are We Feeling Blue Friday. Thank you so much for joining me today, and how I end every single episode, every single day. Let's go Blues.